I think most people would agree that Geralt's time in the spotlight is over, no matter the ending you got in Wild Hunt. The story of the White Wolf seems quite conclusive, resulting in his death or retirement, and pulling him back into the central role would feel tacked on to his legendary saga. This has led many people to assume that Ciri would take his place as the new heir to the Witcher's legacy, but I'd argue that the Lion Cub of Cintra wouldn't work as the protagonist for the Witcher franchise, and I'd like to lay out why. To be put simply, Ciri works better as a MacGuffin, as that's her role in the story of both the books and the third game. She's the greatest MacGuffin to ever be written, with her disillusionment with the world and her role in it becoming horrifying to read, damn you Bonnart. It's an excellent tearing down of expectations. She's told that she's this all-important figure, and she trains in the ways of the Witcher to become a badass, and then her life gets completely ripped apart as she finds out that those who seek her see her as an object they'll do anything to get. In book form, she's a phenomenal protagonist, and her story deserves the equal word count to Geralt that she receives across the saga, but in a video game, it's pretty different. The Witcher games worked because it was mutant versus monster. It was still intimidating to face down these beasts every time. Geralt only had his swords and wits about him to face any horror, and these life or death struggles are what made each fight so intense. Geralt isn't a cool, calm-headed fighter, he's vicious, never overconfident, and treats each battle like it could be his last. This often leads to the brutal dismembering of his enemies, and though he was a mutant, that didn't come with extraordinary powers. It merely brought him to the level of the monsters. He still had to rely on swordsmanship and rudimentary magic in the signs. He couldn't cast godly spells like Yennefer, and he certainly didn't have the overwhelming strength Ciri had. Ciri, being the Lady of Space and Time, is essentially a superhuman in this franchise, with insane abilities like teleportation, which is used in the game, but she can also use that power to travel to other worlds, as well as the fact that she has access to incredibly powerful spells due to the Elder Blood. You may be thinking, what are you talking about? We played as Ciri in the third game, and she couldn't do any of this crazy stuff. She just played identically to Geralt. What you may be forgetting is that Ciri was on the run from the Wild Hunt, and every time she used her powers, the hunt could track her magical signature. So she purposely limits herself, and it's kind of dumb that her dodge is a teleport when that's still giving her location away, and rolling would have worked just fine. So if Ciri were to be the protagonist of a Witcher game, then her abilities would be so powerful that no one would realistically stand a chance, because she has no reason to hide her powers now that the Wild Hunt is gone, so nothing's stopping her from obliterating any threat that stands in her way. You'd have to make a character action game like Stellar Blade with the level of magic and abilities that Ciri has, not to mention people would expect the open world to incorporate multiple dimensions, since Ciri can travel between them, and then you're making a sci-fi game, and who wants a sci-fi Witcher game? I'll tell you who, not CD Projekt, because surprising many people, there wasn't a Ciri cameo anywhere to be found in Cyberpunk 2077, hence the developers don't want to show us Ciri in a fish-out-of-water scenario. Another reason for her not being the protagonist is that she suffers from the same fate as Geralt. Her story is done. We've known her since her literal conception, and she's gone through one of the most painful character arcs imaginable, and she's finally put the darkness of her life behind her. Do we really want to see another threat ruin her new life? Ciri is an incredible character, and while she definitely could carry a game from a narrative standpoint, as she's certainly interesting and likable enough, from a lore perspective, she just doesn't fit in as a Witcher. She's too strong for anything left in the books to be a credible threat to her. Meaning having her as the protagonist of a Witcher game would mean that CD Projekt would have to nerf her lore-wise, or contrive some way for her powers to be weakened, so that the Drowners and Bandits stand a chance against her. She's essentially the Superman of the Witcher franchise, where nothing on the continent can stand up to her now that she's not hiding from Eredin. And the reason we haven't had a Superman game yet is that there aren't any enemies that could believably stand up to him. It's the same with Ciri. There just isn't anything left in the Witcher lore that she can't easily overcome, and no one wants to play a game as a character that isn't at their full potential. So I hope Witcher 4 introduces a new protagonist, and we get to move on from the Geralt saga. Do we really want The Witcher to end up like Star Wars, where everything ties back into the Skywalkers, or do we want this world to continue expanding beyond what we've already seen? I'll be back in 2 days, and if you enjoyed this video, here's one about whether Cyberpunk 2 will reuse Night City.